Anandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Jashodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tirabana Chari Natirabana Jai Shri Gonitai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Paribrajaka Ashtatera Sati Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Oboy Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Pramsikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Maya Purna Bhatvi Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Jai Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya. Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sanjivari Paschatyanista. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is the fourth canto, chapter 9, text 6. Dhruva Vacha Yonta Pravishya Mama Vacham Imam Prashuptam Pravishya Mama Vacham Imam Prashuptam Sanjiva Yat Yakila Shakti Dhara Swadamna Sanjiva Yat Yakila Shakti Dhara Swadam Anyam Shahasta Charana Shavana Tvagadin Pranam Namo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam Pranam Namo Bhagavate Jaya Dhruva Vacha Yonta Pravishya Mama Vacham Imam Prashuptam Sajiva Yat Yakila Shakti Dhara Swadamna Anyanscha hascha charana shravana tvaradim. Pranam namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. Bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. Dhruva uvacha. Yonta pravishya mama vachamimam prashuptam. Sanjivayat kila shakti dharash. Sanjivayat yakila shakti dharasvadamna. Anyamscha hashta charana shravanatva adin. Pranam namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. Purushaya tubhyam. Dhruva Yonta pravishya mama vachamimam prasuptam. Sajivayakila shakti damna. Anyamscha hasya charana shravanat adin. Pranam namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. Dhruva vacha. Yonta pravishya mama vachamimam prashuptam. Sanjivayat yakila shakti dara swadamna. Anyamscha hashta charana shavana tvadim. Pranam namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. Dhruva uvacha. Yonta pravishya mama vachamimam prashutam. Sanjivayat yakila shakti dara swadamna. Anyamscha hashta charana shravanatvagadim. Pranam namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. Uvacha. Dam prashuptam. Sajivayakila shaktara shadamna. Pranam namo bhagavate purushaya. Word meanings. Dhruva uvacha. Dhruva Mahārāja said, Yaha, the Supreme Lord who, Antaha, within, Pravishya, entering, Mama, my, Vacham, words, Imam, all these, Prasuptam, which are all inactive or dead, Sanjivayati, rejuvenates, Akila, universal. Shakti, energy. Daraha, possessing. Swadhamna, by his internal potency. Anyancha, other limbs also. Hasta, like hands. Charana, legs. Shavana, ears. Tvak, skin. Adin, and so on. Pranan, life force. Namaha, let me offer my obeisances. Bhagavate, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purushaya, the Supreme Person. Tubhyam, unto you. So we want to remind ourselves that Dhruva Mahārāja is reciting this verse spontaneously. It wasn't edited, it wasn't written, it was just spoken by the mercy of Krishna. And he's only 5, so just to remind ourselves. Dhruva Mahārāja said, "My dear Lord, you are all-powerful. After entering within me, you have enlivened all my sleeping senses, my hands, legs, ears, touch sensation, life force, and especially my power of speech. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you." So, indirectly, Dhruva is acknowledging that his ability to glorify is coming from Krishna's mercy. It's not his. It's not his words, and it's not his Shakti. And this is one of the meanings or definitions of humility, is to know where our power comes from. And definition of false ego is to claim something to be ours which isn't. And in this case, it would be claiming Krishna's power working through us as ours rather than it being Krishna's. And so, to be properly empowered, there has to be humility, because there has to be recognition of where the power is coming from. Otherwise, we'll misuse the power. Now, one thing interesting that Prabhupada has said, and also Srila Bhaktisiddhanta has said, that the yogis are lower than the Mayavadis or impersonalists, because the yogis actually think they're the super soul. They want to be that super soul. So he said they're actually lower. Interesting, right? He said the yogis are the lowest. Between the impersonalists, the jnanis, and the yogis are the lowest because they want to be Krishna. They think that super soul is them, or they want to be that. Purport. Dhruva Mahārāja could understand very easily the difference between his condition before and after attaining spiritual realization and seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He could understand that his life force and activities had been sleeping. Unless one comes to the spiritual platform, his bodily limbs, mind, and other facilities within the body are understood to be sleeping. Unless one is spiritually situated, all his activities are taken as a dead man's activities or ghostly activities. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has composed a song in which he addresses himself, "O living entity, get up. How long shall you sleep on the lap of Maya? Now you have the opportunity of possessing a human form of body. Now try to get up and realize yourself." The Vedas also declare, "Get up, get up. You have the opportunity, the boon of the human form of life. Now realize yourself." These are all Vedic injunctions. It's just like sometimes we get a realization and it kind of wakes us up. We have an aha moment. We didn't understand something. and now we understand it, or we have an experience. Maybe you went to Vrindavan or Mayapur, and the first time it was nice, but the second time or third time or the fifth time or the 25th time, something happened, and you see it on a different level. It's like, oh, I never understood this. Or you chant, you go more deeply into your chanting, and then you realize, I've never chanted like this. It's like you wake up. It's like, it's experienced in a new way. So that's what Prabhupada is describing here. Dhruva has completely woken up from Maya. And so he's perceiving everything differently. Of course, he's seeing Krishna. But everything is now different. So he's saying, I've woken up. So that's like, you don't know you're sleeping until you wake up, right? You don't know something's bad until you get something better. So that's kind of, he's having a major aha moment, realizing I've been sleeping all my life. There's a whole existence that I had no idea was there. Or, as Prabhupada explains, it's because the senses are contaminated. And so when the senses become purified, now you're seeing the same thing, you're tasting the same thing, you're hearing the same thing, smelling the same thing, touching the same thing. It's a different experience. That's why Shastra says sometimes a person becomes liberated by seeing Lord Jagannath, or liberated by taking Charnamrita, or liberated by smelling Tulsi. And then we think, well, I've taken Charnamrita, I've taken Tulsi, I've seen the deity, and I feel like I need help, I'm struggling. It wasn't any like major epiphany. Well, it depends on the purity of the senses. When Mahaprabhu saw Jagannath, he fainted. How many people see Jagannath every day? How many faint? Probably nobody. How many people see Jagannath? Millions. How many have fainted? Lord Chaitanya fainted. So, and we are chanting the holy name every day. How many of us are crying? Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, when I chant, I'm swimming in an ocean of nectar. How many of us feel like we're swimming in an ocean of nectar? How many of us are crying? It's not normal, because the senses are not yet pure. So the same activity with purified senses is a completely different experience. You can read the descriptions of the stage of bhava. And so in the stage of bhava, or any higher stage of bhakti, the devotee's doing the same thing we're doing. It's not like it changes. Like when you reach a certain level of bhakti, you don't chant, you don't hear, you do all those things. It's just the experience is different. So now in the stage of bhava, there's ecstatic symptoms which are being generated by the very same things we've done our whole life that didn't generate ecstasy. Even maybe the same thing that was boring us. Okay, I've chanted enough rounds, I'm bored, let me do something else. Now, with purified senses, I can't stop chanting. So the same activity, totally different experience. So imagine you had some deep taste for the holy name, and you just didn't want to stop chanting, and you're tasting it in a new way. You might say something like, I've been chanting the holy name my whole life, and now it's a new experience. I didn't know this was actually the holy name. I must not have been chanting this holy name. I must not have been penetrating the transcendental nature of the holy name, because I never experienced it like this. So that's what Dhruva Mahārāja is experiencing. It's like the contamination of the modes of nature that are covering his senses are removed, so everything's different. I've never, it's like give you your 3D glasses. Now you're watching the movie in 3D. Something like that. And then Prabhupada quotes this verse, get up, utishta utishta jagata prapya varani bodhitaha. Get up, wake up. Hello everyone, you have a human body, you know what that means. You can go back to Godhead. Wake up, anybody home? Knock, knock, knock. That's what that verse is. Like, and it sounds funny, but people are so dull. Knock, knock, knock. Hello, hello. Why are you working so hard? You got to have a human form of life. Why are you living like a dog? Hello, hello. Anybody home? Anybody home? No, no, no. Don't talk to me. I don't want to listen. That's why Shastra is saying, wake up, wake up. Deep sleep. Everyone's in deep sleep. Every day going to work. Why? To pay the bills. Why? To pay for things you don't need. Why? Because you think it'll make you happy. Hello, hello, anybody home? Is anybody happy that's doing this? Has anyone been happy? Is anybody going to be happy? No, but why are you doing it? I don't know. It's because I don't know. Because everyone else is doing it. So wake up, wake up. Hello, hello, anybody home? Is your brain working? Turn it on, start thinking. That's what Shastra is saying. And why it's saying that is because everyone's brain has been turned off. It's Kali Yuga. Their brains don't work anymore. They become zombies. And we have that experience because we're trying to preach, and everyone has 1,000,001 arguments to what we're telling them. Yeah, but don't be so pessimistic. And yeah, and I'm happy, and life is good. And so I say, if you could just taste the holy name, if you could just see Krishna for a moment, if you could just get a glimpse of what spiritual life is, you wouldn't never say all these things are good. You would realize, no, I've been completely in illusion, in ignorance, covered. I've been eating stool thinking it's nectar. That's what you would realize. And that's why the Shastra gives all these examples, and when we're not Krishna conscious and we read them, we think, oh, these examples are so exaggerated and so heavy, and how can they say this? And, the acharyas say, my pride is like, my desire to be glorified is like bathing in donkey urine. It's like, whoa. But that's how they feel. That's how they feel, because they're experiencing Krishna consciousness. That the so-called pleasure we get from being honored, for them, that's like taking a bath in urine. It stinks, it smells, it's horrible, it's putrid. It's the last thing you'd want to do. But for us as conditioned souls, that's what we live for, to be honored, to glorified, to be number one. And for them, it's just poison. So because our senses aren't purified, we don't understand these things. And therefore, we first have to understand through knowledge. And then we have to practice, and then they become purified, and then we experience raso varjam, raso piyasya, and then when we experience, we become stable in Krishna consciousness. The stage of ruchi is the fifth stage, ruchi. And then at stage of ruchi, everything is transcendently pleasing, senses are purified, and there's tremendous stability in your spiritual life. You're not like, oh, maybe this, kirtan was good, but I want to do this also. So there's this still before that, there's this attraction on both sides of the coin. Now, ruchi, there's no attraction for the material. Now your senses are sufficiently purified that you're tasting, seeing, hearing, smelling, and touching the transcendental nature of Krishna consciousness. So it's relishable, it's sweet. You don't have to wake up, you're already awake. But until that stage, there's some waking up and some reminders are necessary. If we had a taste for the holy name, what reminder would we need? We just chant and cry and relish and think of Krishna. But until then, the Shastra it's saying, hello, hello, did you forget that you're spirit soul? Did you forget you're a servant? And we say, yeah, I did forget. Right? Did you forget? Yeah. Wake up, wake up. Oh, I didn't know I was sleeping. Yeah, you fell asleep. You ever fall asleep during japa? And then you wake up and then you realize you were sleeping. You didn't know. So Shastras, wake up, wake up. Oh yeah, thank you. I didn't know I was sleeping. Utishta, jagrata, prapya viron nibodhata. You're like, wake up, you're a human being. Don't live like an animal. So Dhruva's having some, we could say some epiphany here. He's having an aha moment based on his experience, because now he's seeing Krishna with transcendental senses, and it is a completely different experience from anything. And that's why when Krishna said, what do you want? I've come here to fulfill your desire. Dhruva said, I don't want anything. Because now he was in a different level. He wasn't on that other level where he's retaliating to outdo his father. Now he's seeing Krishna, that's so much better than retaliation. So Krishna says, so what do you want, a planet? And he's saying, no, I have you. That's it. Doesn't get any better than this, right? So until we have that transcendental experience, we can't say, like Dhruva, no, Varam nayache, I don't want anything. We can't say that, because we all want something, right? And when we see Krishna with transcendental senses and experience the holy name with transcendental senses, then Varam nayache, I don't want any boon. I want nothing because I have Why would you want anything if you already have everything? If you have Krishna, you have everything, so you don't need anything. So Dhruva says, I don't need anything because I have you. Why would I need anything? I have you. So the more we desire, the more we hanker, that means the less realization we have. The sochiti na kangchiti is part of the transcendental platform, not hankering, not lamenting. So the more we lament, the more we hanker, then we can say, oh, I'm on the material platform. The less we hanker and lament, the more I'm relishing Krishna consciousness. I mean, imagine we could experience Krishna consciousness on the level of how the great acharyas experience it. So obviously, we wouldn't be hankering or lamenting. We would be satisfied. So let's read further. Dhruva Mahārāja actually experienced that upon enlightenment of his senses on the spiritual platform, he could understand the essence of Vedic instruction that the Supreme Godhead is the Supreme Person, he is not impersonal. Dhruva Mahārāja could immediately understand this fact. He was aware that for a very long time he was practically sleeping, and he felt the impetus to glorify the Lord according to the Vedic conclusion. A mundane person cannot offer any prayer or glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he has no realization of the Vedic conclusion. That when we glorify Krishna in prayers and poetry, it's born out of love. That's what generates. Prabhupada said poetry is generated out of love. And you'll see there's so much poetry written by the acharyas because they love. You write poetry about what you love, right? You might write a poem about pizza because you love it so much. Normally you write a poem about your girlfriend or boyfriend, how much you love them or how much you hate them. So poetry also comes from hatred. Shisi Gornitai, Gijai. Hare Krishna. So naturally, he's seeing Krishna, and so naturally, out of love, these prayers come. Just pour out of his heart. You'll find in Bhagavatam, when devotees meet Krishna, they naturally offer prayers. It's like if you see something beautiful, you offer a prayer. Sometimes the only prayer you offer is, wow. Isn't it? You see something, you go, wow. That's kind of a glorification. It's a speechless glorification. Wow. You don't know what to say. It's just so amazing. Right? You ever say, wow? It's a glorification. So if you see Krishna, you're going to say, wow, but you're going to put it into beautiful glorification because he's worthy to be glorified and he's so beautiful and amazing that you have to say something. You can't just sit there and go, wow. You have to say something. And because of that love, the poetry just comes out. And so there's so many prayers, beautiful prayers glorifying Krishna because the poetry is just coming out. When Dhruva Mahārāja therefore found this difference within himself, he could immediately understand that it was because of the causeless mercy of the Lord. So this is a very, very important point, that Dhruva is seeing Krishna. How did that happen? That Krishna only appears out of his own sweet will. You can't force Krishna to appear. You can't say, okay, today I'll chant 192 rounds, tomorrow 192, and Sunday 192, and Krishna will appear at 6 o'clock. It doesn't work that way. So Krishna is appearing before Dhruva. How did that happen? Only by his sweet will would it happen. You can't force it. No matter how great you are, you can't force it. But Krishna comes out of his mercy, his kindness, being attracted by his devotees' efforts and his devotees' love. So we can apply this principle to any kind of advancement we make in Krishna consciousness. It's due to the mercy of Krishna. And therefore, two things are there. Whatever advancement we make, we understand it's not us. It's not about our false ego that I am advanced and I did it myself. It's about Krishna's mercy. And we therefore understand that advancement, it can only happen if Krishna allows it. And we are dependent on his mercy. We ask for it, we strive for it, we work for it, we pray for it, and we understand that any advancement we make, it's come from mercy. And anything wonderful we could say or do, it's also a consequence of Krishna's mercy. Of course, we can take credit for the fact that Krishna has chosen to give us mercy. We must have done something. We must have desired it. We must be praying for it. So yes, that's to our credit. But it's not that we have done it. Krishna has done it. And so we advance because of his mercy. And that's how a devotee always stays humble, because he never thinks, whatever I have achieved, either spiritually or practically, is due to my power. It's always due to Krishna's power. And when a devotee thinks this way, as a consequence, he becomes much bolder and more fearless, because now he doesn't think it depends on my strength, it depends on Krishna's grace. And he sees that he's always getting Krishna's grace, so he has faith in Krishna's grace, so he can become bolder, thinking, well, it's not dependent on my ability, it's dependent on Krishna's. So if I make a bigger plan, maybe Krishna will give me bigger Shakti, bigger intelligence, bigger ability. So, okay, let's try it out. Let's see what happens. Why not? Let's try for something bigger. That's how a devotee thinks. Rather than it's a false, not coming from false ego, no, I can't do that, it's me, and then I'm afraid to do this because I'm afraid I won't be successful. No, if Krishna wants you to be successful, he'll give you the power. So you shift it, and you think, okay, let's try. If we fail, maybe Krishna doesn't want it, maybe he doesn't want to do it through me, but he may want to do it through me, and we may succeed, so let's try it. Let's see what happens. Yes? Why not? So it's a kind of transcendental spiritual self-confidence. I'm self-confident without ego. It's not, I'm going to do it. It's like, I would like to do it, and if Krishna's merciful upon me, it'll be successful. That's the idea. Yes? So false ego is limiting our ability to be successful, because why would Krishna want to give you power if it just contaminates you and makes you think it's your power? So Krishna empowers you, he gives you some talent, intelligence to do some service, and then you think, oh, that's me, and then you accept honor and glorification from other devotees, so then you contaminate yourself. But why would Krishna want you, put you in a position where it's not good for you? But when you're humble and Krishna can use you, then Krishna says, yes, let's use you. And then so he empowers you. He offered obeisances to the Lord with great respect and reverence, completely understanding that the Lord's favor was upon him. Thank you, Krishna. I know I didn't do this, you did this. This spiritual enlivenment of Dhruva Mahārāja's senses and mind was due to the action of the internal potency of the Lord. In this verse, therefore, the word swadhamna means by spiritual energy. Spiritual enlightenment is possible by the mercy of the spiritual energy of the Lord. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is first addressed to the spiritual energy of the Lord, Hare. This spiritual energy acts when a living entity fully surrenders and accepts his position as an eternal servitor. On a morning walk, Prabhupada said, every jiva, every living entity is controlled. It's just what they're controlled by. Some are controlled by the external energy, some are controlled by the internal energy, but everyone's controlled. So we have to decide who we want to be controlled with because we will be controlled. So Hare Krishna, that's being controlled or asking Krishna to allow us to be controlled or influenced by the internal potency. Otherwise, we're influenced by Maya Shakti, external potency. That's it. We're going to be influenced by something. So we have to decide by our decisions and lifestyle which energy we're going to be influenced by. Like a lot of times, we feel very enlivened in our spiritual life because we're acting in a way where we're being protected by the internal potency. We're not connecting or interfacing with the external potency. We're interfacing with the internal potency. We're always hearing chanting and serving and so forth. So everything is up. And it's all going up all the time. And so we feel very, very good, very happy, very free from material desire and so forth. And sometimes it's the opposite. It's just an energy we're allowing ourselves to be influenced by. And that's why when you go to the Dham, you feel so good because the spiritual energy dominates. And so just by being in the Dham, pretty much we're dominated by that internal potency. Isn't it? And so everything's always just bringing us more towards Krishna all day. Right? And then you come back to Australia and then you go back to work and everything is tamasic and rajasic, mostly tamasic. And so there's this, like, we have to be insulated by hearing, chanting, serving, associating, and so forth, preaching. And then insulated within that internal potency, everything's okay. And we feel that mercy of that energy. That energy is full of mercy because that energy pulls us to Krishna. This spiritual energy acts when a living entity fully surrenders and accepts his position as an eternal servitor. When a person places himself at the disposal or order of the Supreme Lord, that is called Sevan Mukha. At that time, the spiritual energy gradually reveals the Lord to him. Without revelation by the spiritual energy, one is unable to offer prayers glorifying the Lord. Any amount of philosophical speculation or poetic expression by mundane persons is still considered to be the action and reaction of the material energy, like academics who talk about Krishna. And Prabhupada is referring to them here. They're under the influence of Maya. Even though they're reading Bhagavatam and discussing it, they're actually under the influence of Maya because they're not devotees. When one is actually enlivened by the spiritual energy, all his senses become purified and he engages only in the service of the Lord. At that time, his hands, legs, ears, tongue, mind, genitals, everything engage in the service of the Lord. Such an enlightened devotee no longer has any material activities, nor has he any interest in being materially engaged. This process of purifying the senses and engaging them in the service of the Lord is known as bhakti, or devotional service. In the beginning, the senses are engaged by the direction of the spiritual master and Shastra, and after realization, when the same senses are purified, the engagement continues. The difference is that in the beginning the senses are engaged in a mechanical way. But after realization they are engaged in spiritual understanding. So this is really, really, really important. The beginning of bhakti, it's more mechanical. And of course nobody likes to be mechanical. But we have to be a little mechanical in the beginning. Because what Prabhupada means by mechanical is by force, where there's no natural attraction. So you do it because you're supposed to. It's kind of like in traditional culture, when a man and a woman get married, they may not have met one another before they got married. So the first few weeks or months, it's pretty mechanical, because they don't even know one another. You imagine you marry someone you don't even know, you've never met before the wedding, and then you go home together. So that's a little mechanical, right? The relationship, it hasn't developed. So we could see that like the beginning of bhakti. There's no natural attraction yet. But by being together, Prabhupada said that naturally the affection develops. So then it becomes more natural. So by being with Krishna, through doing the mechanical service, the relationship develops. It becomes more natural, and we become more attracted. And we don't want to stay on the mechanical platform forever, but until there's some attraction, it is going to be somewhat mechanical. And we try to neutralize those mechanisms by at least being sincere and offering whatever devotion we have, although very little. But we try to be devotional. But as our senses become purified, naturally the attraction becomes stronger. And so you see this in so many aspects of bhakti. Maybe you don't like reading the Bhagavatam. You force yourself. At some point you get attraction, and then you think, this Bhagavatam is amazing. It's the most important book. I live Bhagavatam. I think about the Bhagavatam all the time. My whole life relates through every story in Bhagavatam. That's how I see the world. That's a transition, right? That book becomes the book you hold on your chest, the book that's your guiding light. Everything about Krishna consciousness, you get it from Bhagavatam. Where in the beginning you read it and you think, what's the relevance of all this? Some king, 5,000 years ago, fighting a battle, that's totally irrelevant to me. And why do I have to read this book? I'd rather just read something modern and current. But by reading it mechanically, after a while, you start to penetrate. Your senses become purified, and you see it in a different way. You experience it in a different way. Same thing with the holy name. Just to chant 16 rounds may be considered a chore or felt as a chore by you. But at some point, when you finish your 16 rounds, you won't want to stop. So that's obviously what we're trying to reach. But read that last sentence again. The difference is that in the beginning, the senses are engaged in a mechanical way, but after realization, they're engaged in spiritual understanding. It's a totally different experience. Krishna consciousness is a total different experience the more your senses are purified. So your experience of chanting now and your experience of chanting with more purified senses is going to be different. It's like a different mantra, but it's not a different mantra, it's a different experience of the same mantra. Like some devotees told me after they did some cleansing, there are certain foods they can't eat anymore because they're not healthy. Or if they did some cleansing, they don't need so much salt, everything's fine. So it's a different, the taste, they said, the food tastes better now that my senses are more purified. My body's more clean, it tastes better. So, when your senses are more clean, the holy name will taste better. The Bhagavatam will taste better. Everything will taste better. Everything will be sweet. And so, therefore, we should be somewhat concerned if there's no taste, because if there's no taste, it means maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm committing offenses. Maybe I'm being casual in my bhakti. Maybe I have the wrong mentality. Maybe I'm neglecting something. For some reason, there's no taste. And if there is a taste, it's a good sign. Oh, things are going well. I'm advancing. That's why there's taste. So, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, I will stop here and please ask. Or if you have any comments or arguments, debates, controversies. Well, maybe they have something. If you don't, I'll look and see if they do. When I give class, when I'm not traveling, I just give class to the phone and I read the comments.
Any idea how many people on the other side?
Yeah, lots. But normally when I give class to a live audience, I don't read their comments. But when I'm giving class just to them, they have half the class is their questions. These are comments, not questions. No questions. You had some? Yeah.
If there isn't any questions.
The live audience gets first. Yeah.
Well, I just thought. I've been reading this book recently. Profoundly inspired Vaishnava. He's very much he's got some quite profound teachings and specific instructions about trying to increase our chanting of our rounds, ultimately to 1 lakh or 64 rounds. So, although don't so much put emphasis on that sort of movement, it's nevertheless not wrong to try to increase our rounds if possible.
Yes. Depends how old you are also and what you're doing. It's more suitable for an old body that can't do much anyway. But for a young man that can do a lot, if his chanting of 64 rounds is minimizing his service, then Prabhupada would not appreciate it. So it also depends why you're doing it. There was a young man who was chanting 64 in Prabhupada. He really didn't want him to do it. So if that's the case, like your guru doesn't want you to do it, and you do it, then it's a problem. So it will depend on the individual also. So, someone may have the capacity, but the guru may say, go preach. That's a higher service. And you say, no, I want to chant 64. And then the guru will say, when you say I want, it's sense gratification. So even it's 64 I want, if that is minimizing something the guru wants, then that would be a problem. What Prabhupada said, at least 16, you chant. At least 16, more should be chanted, and naturally more will be chanted as one advances. But one must also maintain one's seva, although perhaps some devotees in the latter years of their life who have done tremendous seva want to start increasing and going more deeply. And I think it's natural also for many devotees when they get older to reflect on how much of Krishna consciousness was just licking the honey jar on the outside, and there was no honey there was very little honey floating on the outside. It's like, sometimes you get a little honey on the outside, and they want to open the jar and they want to taste it. And so that may be one way they do that, Or they may go to the Dham and spend a month or 2 months or Chaturmasya chanting 64 rounds. And they're doing that to get the power to go back and preach. So there's different situations. Did I know that? No. I know Bhaktisiddhanta did for 10 years. But when Prabhupada was preaching, he chanted 16. And there's a very heavy story. I mean, we have to, things have to be kept in balance, because we have to be sensitive to the heart and the needs and instructions that Prabhupada wanted for us. So something may make sense, but then we have to see, well, does it make sense within the context that Prabhupada wanted? So one time a devotee wanted, he was a young man, he wanted to leave. He wanted to go to Rishikesh and hide, because he wanted to remain brahmachari. And so, you could look at it one sense and say, well, he wants to save himself and be Krishna conscious. So he was having difficulty, and he asked Prabhupada about that, and Prabhupada said no. He said, please don't do that. So Prabhupada was saying to him, please don't do that. You're on the front lines preaching, don't run away. Don't leave it. So Prabhupada very much stressed that. And then Prabhupada said something which would require some discussion, but it was a very heavy statement. And he said, Prabhupada said, I wasted so much time in Vrindavan. Like, it seems like in hindsight, Prabhupada realized he should have started his mission sooner. Of course, he was staying there to finish writing his books, and of course, who wouldn't want to stay in Vrindavan? But it seems that Prabhupada had some reflection that he should have been more out in the public. And Prabhupada had mentioned that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would push his qualified disciples to preach, and some just wanted to chant 64 rounds, and he would say, push them, and and Prabhupada said Bhaktisiddhanta would even ask him to push. And that's why we see Prabhupada was always trying to get his godbrothers to help him. He was pushing them a lot. Come, help me. Come preach. Come to Mayapur, preach. So we have to understand that side. That's something Prabhupada stressed a lot. So we have to balance, according to the individual's capacity, service, realization, effect it will have on him and others, and Prabhupada's desire. It's a whole synergistic equation, from what I understand. And it would make an interesting discussion, because I think there'll be strong arguments on both sides. I think I was told in Mayapur there were a group of devotees chanting 64 rounds every day. But they would get up at 2 a.m. and they would chant straight through till 10. So they did a full day of service. And there's a story that in one Ekadasi, the devotees were asking Prabhupada, there was a discussion about chanting 25 rounds at least. And so they asked Prabhupada, and he said, yes, Ekadasi, yeah, you should chant more. And then the Sankirtan leader said, so Srila Prabhupada, the Sankirtan devotees will stay back and chant extra? And Prabhupada said, no. He said, that chanting extra is for the people who are staying back, who aren't preaching, who have time, not for the preachers. So we have to keep that in consideration. Because ultimately the idea is to please Prabhupada. And so sometimes, unfortunately, we may please him, we may do something to please him that doesn't please him. And it may be very Krishna conscious, so that's why we need guidance. It's like doing something Krishna conscious is not always Krishna conscious unless it's pleasing the Guru. If, you would think, well, this would please the Guru, and it may, but it may not. Not just because it's Krishna conscious does it please the Guru. Like many young men in the early days of the movement wanted to leave their wife and take sannyas. So you think, oh, they're renouncing, sacrificing everything for the Guru. That's very good. And Prabhupada chastised them. So it doesn't exist only in a vacuum. So we have to understand it in a broad way. Yes?
No, just getting back to class today, our aim is to try and uncontaminate our senses and purify them. And say chanting 64 rounds may be a way to that, or also devotional service may be a way to that. So I guess it just depends on the circumstances at the time, which is the best option, whether you want to, I guess, take a more selfish choice and chant all day or do that service, but I guess...
No, it's not like that. It's what Prabhupada wants. So you can't make that decision without seeing it through his... So like in our movement, Prabhupada never asked us to chant 64. He asked us to chant 16, and then he kicked us out on the street all day. Go chant Harinam. So that's what we did. So chant 16, go out and share Krishna consciousness. If I chant 64, that's 6 hours more, I won't be able to share it. So that, I think we could say, generally that's the general instruction. Now, if you can do 64 and do both, more power to you. But if you're doing 64 and doing nothing, then Prabhupada would not want you to do that unless you're like, 75 and, you're just being in the temple chanting 64 is just like inspiring everybody, because that could be like that. Or you can't do anything. You're not physically able to. I have a godbrother who was thinking he wants to just chant 64 rounds a day. He thinks that would actually help where he goes and where he lives. It would inspire devotees. But for young men and women, Prabhupada didn't feel we would be successful at doing that. Because you have to be a little more advanced. Otherwise, you just get bored and think about prasadam and, so on and so forth. So Prabhupada saw, these young men and women are pretty passionate. So he engaged them like that. So, yeah, we shouldn't look at it solely in terms of what would be best for me. We have to look at it through the traditional way Prabhupada engaged us. Because he knew what was best, right? I've been around some people who chant 64 rounds a day, and I could see it's really difficult because they're busy. And so they're just trying to get them done. I've been around them, and they were like drinking something and chanting. It's like, I could see that, for them to get those 64 done, they had they were talking and chanting and like everything, it's like 8 hours instead. So if that's the case, what's the point? The point was, in that particular organization, that was the standard. So that's what they did. So somehow they get them done. But Prabhupada didn't feel we could do that. I think he felt, especially for younger devotees, it wouldn't even be good to do it. They wouldn't be chanting properly. They need to be engaged. In fact, there was one young devotee who was chanting 64 rounds. And in order to do that, he had to separate from the devotees. He had to live separately because he needed 8 hours. And he didn't want to be disturbed, and people would talk, and ISKCON's very social. So he went off and lived a little bit separate from the devotees. And they told Prabhupada about it. And Prabhupada didn't like that because he wasn't participating in any of the programs because he was chanting 64 rounds. So he didn't go to Mangalartik class, Guru Puja. He didn't hang out with the devotees. He needed all that time to chant, and he had to live separate so nobody would bother him. And so when they told Prabhupada about it, and then they said, Prabhupada, he wants to chant 64 rounds. And Prabhupada said, I want a sense gratification. Which was another way of, I think, Prabhupada saying, I don't want him to do this. He didn't ask me, he didn't get permission. Why is he doing this? I never instructed him to do it. So we have to consider all these things. Sometimes devotees have done things which are very Krishna conscious, but their spiritual master didn't want them to do it. So it's not Krishna consciousness in and of itself. It's just like if your spiritual master said, I need you to do this right now, and you said, no, I need to sit in class because hearing is the most important item in devotional service, and Prabhupada said we should go to Srimad Bhagavatam class every day, and you're giving this whole list of reasons to disobey your guru, and they're all good reasons, except the problem is you're disobeying your guru, so you're like, you didn't understand, the first instruction in the Gita to surrender to a guru. So, you have to consider all these things. And I would say, if a devotee wants to chant 64, generally they would talk to their god brothers and god sisters, say, what do you think? Should I do this? How should I do it? Would Prabhupada want this? Like that. So those discussions also. Obviously you go to Vrindavan for a month and chant 64, yeah, go for it. Do it. Go to a retreat, do it every day. That's different than making that your service, kind of. Yes.
Someone says that the whole purpose of chanting is to increase our chanting.
Yes.
So it's like I want to chant 64 rounds, but I don't do any service. I don't do anything because that's the ultimate goal.
Yes. It's 24 hours a day chanting. Yeah. I think Prabhupada would say, well, if you want to do that, then just sit all day and chant, and that'll be your service. Not 64, but like 128 or 150. But nobody can do that. So generally what I saw was that Prabhupada, obviously, like you said, wanted us to be engaged in service. And if someone was reluctant, he'd say, okay, just sit and chant all day, which nobody could do. I mean, all day. In fact, a devotee was diagnosed with cancer, or he was diagnosed with some disease that was fatal. And he asked Prabhupada if he could take Babaji, which means Babaji means that's all he would do is chant. And because he was dying, Prabhupada thought, okay. And he apparently didn't have long to live, so Prabhupada said, okay. So that was his seva, just to chant all day. And he wore a white cloth, like a gamcha up to his knees, and a white chadar, and the stricture was that he would only eat if prasadam was brought to him. He wouldn't go down to the prasadam room. So they arranged that someone would bring prasadam. If somebody forgot, he wouldn't eat. He wouldn't go, hey, where's my prasadam? And he would, give up sleeping and just basically chant as much as possible and sleep as little as possible. So he was doing that. And I was living in the room next to him while he was doing it. So he probably was 25, 26, 27 max. And then somehow or other, I don't know the details, but
He got better?
yeah. It was either the wrong diagnosis or he got better or both. And so then he gave that up. And that was the only time Prabhupada ever gave Babaji, because he saw that we were unable to do it. So of course that's 1976, this is 2019. Times have changed. Devotees naturally, their taste is increasing, they chant more. So there's another story in which the devotees asked Prabhupada if they could stay up all night during Ekadasi and chant. And Prabhupada said, that's fine, just don't sleep in the day. So if you're going to do one thing, still maintain your regular service. That was his idea. Okay, it's a credit to stay up all night and chant, but it's not a credit to then go to sleep at 4 o'clock and get up at 10 or 11. It kind of neutralized, the good you did. That would be like chanting 64, and the next 3 days don't chant anything, since I've already chanted 64. So I think, the answer is take it, according to your qualification, it'll happen naturally. You won't even have to think about it. You'll just do it.
You mean increase chanting?
Yeah, it'll just happen. It'll have to happen naturally. But and naturally means you'll take in consideration your own taste and your own responsibilities also. And then it'll just kind of evolve. Maybe your responsibility is that your main service is to teach about chanting. And so you want to chant 64 rounds because that empowers you to teach. Maybe your responsibility is as a GBC and you're managing many zones and important projects. And for you to be out of touch 8 hours a day would make it difficult or impossible. So I think it tends to evolve in itself naturally. It's like Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti is a practice. Should you practice it? Well, it evolves naturally. It's not like, should I do it today or not? It's like eating. Don't eat if you're not hungry. It's not a decision you make, it just happens. So that's a general answer. There's so many details you could fill in. And it will vary from person to person. Yes?
So again in the last sentence of the purpose is, it's okay to be mechanical in the beginning of devotional service.
Should evolve from mechanical to purified.
Yeah, is it all right to be?
Is it all right to be mechanical in the beginning?
Chanting.
I don't think we have to be mechanical entirely, because if we add sincerity and we try to understand the nature of bhakti more deeply, it'll nullify some of the mechanical tendency that's necessary. Prabhupada's referring to impure senses, so your senses are impure, you're not tasting, so it's mechanical. But that may be the case. Let's say I'm chanting, it's very mechanical, because I don't have much of a taste, so I'm doing it out of duty. But can I pray sincerely to the holy name? Yes. So that you can add something more natural and deep. Can I appreciate the holy name? Yes, I could do that. Will that help neutralize the mechanical chanting? Yes, it'll help. It's just interesting that you have maybe a kind of dichotomy in that there's no real bhav or real ruchi there, but at the same time, you have your sincerity, you have your attitude, which is all meant to be devotional, according to your capacity of the devotion that you can muster up at that point. So let's say you go out and you preach.